It's not often anyone puts a base model on the Canadian media fleet, so thank you Toyota for doing that. And specifically, I'm with the 2026 refreshed Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid. In this video, we'll go through some baseline numbers, perks, quirks, and irks, pricing and competition, and see how Toyota lands in the sea of competitors in the compact crossover market. Let's start off like usual with our baseline numbers, and just like last year, the Corolla Cross Hybrid runs off a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, 196 horsepower, 139 pound-feet of torque through an eCVT, and both trims of the Corolla Cross Hybrid come with all-wheel drive as standard fare. Fuel economy is going to be the big one here, and off a 40-liter fuel tank of 87 octane, the Corolla Cross Hybrid averages 5.6 liters per 100 kilometers, or I believe it's 50 miles a gallon, and that lets you go up to 715 kilometers, theoretically, on a full tank of fuel. Now, the gasoline top trim Corolla Cross runs off a 47-liter fuel tank, so 7 extra liters, and the fuel economy there averages out to 7.8 liters per 100 kilometers, meaning you can theoretically go 602 kilometers. So it's 113 theoretical kilometers that you can go further with here in the hybrid as opposed to the gas. And a bit of a spoiler for later on, there is only a $750 price difference between top trim hybrid, top trim gasoline. So more on that later on. On the cargo side of things, the hybrid gets 609 liters of cargo space, whereas the front wheel drive version gets 680. So if you need that extra cargo space on a daily basis, you're gotta cross off the hybrid from your shopping list, and you gotta cross off the all-wheel drive. There are a couple of front-wheel drive trims. And finally, you can tow up to 1,500 pounds here in the hybrids. Let's go through what's new for the mid-cycle refresh. So you get a new front fascia. Looks like the Camry, looks a little bit like some of the Lexuses. It's body colored. And on the gasoline trim, Toyota went for a rugged look, or that's the wording they used. There's a new 10.5 infotainment screen, up from 8 inches from the year before. There's a new exterior color, which is the Cavalry Blue. And you get optional 18-inch wheels here. So a few things, not too much. The most impactful one, I think, will be the available 10.5-inch infotainment screen. Now, that does come standard on both of the hybrid trims here. So it doesn't seem like a lot going from 8 to 10.5, but in a world where screens are dominating the interiors, I think Toyota played it right by upping it a little bit. On to the perk side of things, and yes, the fuel efficiency is the big perk here. Again, deliver 700 kilometers total distance driven, theoretically, of course. It drives pretty well. Now, Nissan did a first drive for the Leaf a couple of days ago in Prince Edward County, which is about 3 hours from where I live. So I took the Corolla Cross Hybrid there and back, and it drove pretty well. There's plenty of power. There's not too much, and it's not lacking by any means, but through the entire drive there and back in the rain, no driver fatigue at all. And this is the base SE model I'm in. Well, base out of 2 models, but it's got the cloth seats instead of the Softex, and there's no lumbar support here. It's a manual driver's seat, and again, no driver fatigue, fully comfortable, easy to find my ideal seating position, even though it's not a powered seat. And the drive felt good. I know it's not supposed to because it's got an eCVT, and Toyotas are kind of bland on the driving side, but while it wasn't an exciting drive, it was still a very pleasant drive. And to that note, keep in mind, if you are looking at a Corolla Cross, you're not looking for performance or speed or anything explosive. There's plenty of other options in the Toyota lineup for that, but as a first car, perhaps a commuter car, or I'm downsizing from something bigger, but I still need some kind of a crossover, subcompact crossover vehicle, Corolla Cross Hybrid does pretty well. It's a predictable drive, I'll say, not boring, certainly not exciting, but it's, yeah, let's go with that. It's a very predictable Toyota drive where it comes as advertised, and if you set your expectations to realistic and you care more about function than fast or flashy, then this just might be the vehicle for you. There's still a blend of physical buttons and the touchscreen, and I like it. I'm showing my age at 47, almost 48 in a few months, but I will always love the fact that they've got physical buttons for your heated steering wheel, your heated seats, all of your HVAC controls, and even some of the safety things, including like your automatic high beams, and obviously the traction control stuff all to the left of the steering wheel here. But I like that there's a nice blend here. There's almost 10 ways you can get a Corolla Cross, whether it's front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive hybrid. So all that to say is there's a lot of choice for consumers who want something in the subcompact crossover market. There are smart storage solutions here. There's a decent sized tray up front, split into two. Cup holders are fairly deep. You get some stuff on the door. Glove box is a decent size, as is the center console beneath my right elbow. Final two perks are that the hybrid comes standard with wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, and you get the Toyota Safety Sense 3.0 here. On the Quirks side of things, it says Corolla Cross 5 times on the exterior. You have it in the headlight housing, which is 2. You have it at the top of the rear quarter panels, which is 4. And in the obvious and predictable spot on the trunk lid, which is 5. This could have been an Irk, but not that big of a deal to me. There's no volume dial. There are 2 buttons for the volume, as well as a power button in the bottom middle of the infotainment screen, but you also have it on your steering wheel. I think back to the current generation of RAV4, because there's an all-new generation coming early 2026. But a quirk for me there and here is I can set my heated seat to either high or low, and because it's a physical button, it will just stay there forever and ever and ever and ever. And the same thing with the heated steering wheel button. So I think that is a very cool and quirky move by Toyota. Last 2 things on the quirk side of things, one of them being the cup holders in the rear doors are mounted pretty high. They're right by the door handle as opposed to being pushed way down at the bottom of the door. So could be a perk. I'm going to call it a quirk because you don't see that very often. And the last one is you can remote start this even though there is no specific remote start button on the key fob. All you do is you lock the doors and then you hold down the lock button 3 times. On the 3rd time you do a long press, and that's how you get your remote start going. On to the Irks we go. First up is a very familiar issue with Toyota, lower models anyway, and that's the very low resolution of the backup camera. And we know Toyota can make extremely high res versions, and I don't think by putting something a little higher res, it'll push the price up that much. And I think people would appreciate it. Some drivers actually rely on that and use that quite a bit. And having something a little higher res would make a pretty significant difference. You have to go to the top trim XSC to get dual zone climate controls. Maybe a small thing, but if you are having somebody in this front seat pretty often and you don't necessarily want the same type of temperatures, having a single zone in the SE, while it saves you a few $1,000s on the price, well, part of the trade-off is you only get single zone climate controls. Last 2 Irks, first one being it is a half heated steering wheel here, where it's just the left and right sides and the top and the bottoms do not have heating coils. And the last one is you have to go to the top trim XSE to get a rear armrest. Right now it is nothing, it is just a seat. Might be a small thing to some, people may not care at all, or it might be something pretty significant depending on who's in that rear seat. Let's get wrapped up with pricing and competition. So your Canadian MSRP figure for the SE, which is what I'm in, is $35,810. And you jump up to the XSE, which is the only other trim you can get, and that's $38,635, a difference of $2,825. Now, if you're wondering what you get for that extra almost $3,000, here are your highlights. You get a sunroof, you get the Softex seats, you get 9 speakers instead of 6, and those 9 come through JBL. You get heated rear seats, a fully digital instrument cluster registering in at 12.3 inches, and you get a power driver's seat with lumbar support. So me specifically, I like having lots of light in the cabin. I like a good audio system. So I would spend that extra $28.25. If I didn't care about those things, I would completely get the SE. There is nothing wrong with it. It is spec'd pretty well out of the box as is. A good transition into competition is the gasoline Corolla Cross. So the top trim XLE On the gasoline side, it comes in at $37,885, which is $750 less than the top trim hybrid. So if you're towing between the two, and what really matters is fuel consumption for you and pricing, absolutely go with the XSE on the hybrid side, because it's only $750 more, and you'll make up that fuel savings in about a year, maybe a touch more. I guess give or take 2 months on either side of it, depending on how much you drive and how you drive for that matter. But I can't see a world where a lot of people are picking the top trim gas over the top trim hybrid. The two big competitors I see are the Honda HR-V, that maxes out at $38,700, and the trim below that is $32,600. And I mentioned the trim below because I don't have the top trim here. I don't have the XSE, I have the SE. So those are your two figures. So it lines up pretty close to what we have here. I think Honda's gonna have to bring in a hybrid version to stay competitive in this subcompact crossover market. And the other one is the Subaru Crosstrek. And I know Subaru's got the symmetrical all-wheel drive and not exactly the same driving feel, still has an ECVT. And I say ECVT because I'm referencing the e-Boxer hybrid, which is here, I believe, on the media fleet at the end of 2025, if not early 2026. It's a little more on the pricey side. It's $40,595 with the Canadian MSRP. Now, the interesting thing is they've got a massive gas tank, 63 liters in the Crosstrek hybrid. Now, fuel figures come in at 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers, meaning you can go almost 1,000 clicks per full tank. It's the same but different here. I think if the Corolla Cross Hybrid had a bigger tank and it would still keep those lower fuel figures, you could also do almost 1,000. Other competitors include the usual suspects, the CX-30, the Kicks, the Kona, the Trailblazer, and the Seltos. So no shortage of options for consumers in the subcompact crossover world. There is a shortage, I feel, of hybrid offerings. So Toyota's done really well by having this that's not true, Corolla Cross. I knew I'd get messed up on that. By having the Corolla Cross as a hybrid. I think Subaru's playing it smart too by getting the Crosstrek introduced as a hybrid. That's gonna wrap it up for the Corolla Cross Hybrid review. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to get you answers as soon as possible. And I'm always happy to engage in respectful conversations online. I invite you to join the Modern Motoring social media platforms. We are on all of the major ones. And without you, there is no Modern Motoring. So I thank you, I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.